Good day, everyone, and welcome to BizNet's webinar today, delivering answers for business users and analysts. My name is Floyd Stanley. I will be your host for most of the day, but I also want to introduce Jordan Blades, our Director of Development, who will be walking through some of the newest features of the BizInsight 7 platform.
Hello. Glad to be with everybody today.
So what is our mission today? Our mission is to introduce BizInsight 7 and present it as a self-service business intelligence solution in Excel, also to illustrate a day in the life. Jordan will demonstrate some new functionality. Here you see his smiling face, and we'll compare and contrast to BizInsight version 5. Now, in terms of what we're going to see today, I'd like to let Jordan introduce that.
Being a reporting package or reporting add-in in Excel has its advantages and disadvantages. I think if you go back to maybe 2008 or 2007, if you really wanted to know our product well, you had to be an Excel expert. And so really since about 2012, we focused on how can we make the concepts that has made us successful and our users successful just as palatable for everyone in the organization. Can they do these repeated tasks of dragging over the data? What does that user interface look like? So I think the other thing you'll see in our products, especially in version 7, is a focus on an enhanced user interface that doesn't look daunting. You're not having to know really some of the concepts of Excel that maybe you needed to know in the past, like cell references. You can drag something over, you can see a value from a system that you recognize, pick that value, press OK, and get data back without really needing to know a lot about how Excel works or how to get data. And I think that's really powerful for the business user. It frees them to go and answer their own questions, and it also, again, frees up the analyst to do the work that made them, to put them in that position in the first place.
What are we talking about when in terms of self-service business intelligence? Well, you folks have lots of tools to attack the problem. We've talked with literally hundreds of BizNet users over the past several years, and all of you, or at least almost all of you, use a lot of different systems in order to go about your daily business. We're a complementary approach, and the reason that we are a complementary approach is that we work directly within Microsoft Excel. So what does that mean in terms of being complementary? Well, this is a friend of BizNet, Perna, who is better known as Chandu, one of the largest Excel organizations in the world in terms of web traffic. And he says, what's the most used feature in any business intelligence solution? It's the Export to Excel button. That was in the August 27 issue of investtech.com. 27 Microsoft Excel experts predict the future of Excel and business intelligence. One of those experts was Bill Jelen, also known as Mr. Excel. He'll be joining us again this year at Excelapalooza coming up in September. The point here is that Excel is not going away. There are more than 1 billion users of Microsoft Office. It's estimated that at least 3/4 of those use Excel almost every day, if not every day. It's a common business language, and it's the standard for business reporting. And so our argument now is, why not start and finish your work in the platform that you know best? That's what BizInsight 7 will allow you to do. Now let's talk about this article in CPA Practice Advisor. BizInsight is scheduled to be featured at cpapracticeadvisor.com in the April edition. Now, I'm a big believer in showing more than telling, and so we'll be getting into our demonstration here in just a moment. but I'm also a big believer in listening. And what I would like to do is launch the audience participation part of today's program and just ask you a question of what is your role? So are you an analyst? Are you people who create the reports? Or are you a business user, the people who consume the reports? And I appreciate you, so many of you, participating in the poll, and the results are coming in pretty much as I expected. And that is a preponderance, and actually a significant majority, are business analysts. That has been the focus of BizInsight. We have been the product that allowed you to do your job in terms of producing business reports. I'm going to close that and share the results with you for just a moment, and then we'll get back to our presentation. Again, 76%, 24% in terms of business analysts versus business users. So what is this deal about self-service business intelligence? Well, it's to let business users perform their day-to-day analytics tasks themselves and free up the specialists, free up the majority of folks on this call that are analysts to get involved in the more critical data analysis that's required in your company. That's what it's all about, and hopefully that's what BizInsight 7 is going to deliver for you. Our target users are people that need information to make decisions. The analysts, the report builders, the business users, executives, managers, frontline personnel. And now we can see a day in the life of those folks. I'm going to play another short video. Some of you may have seen this at biznetsoftware.com, and those who haven't, please enjoy.
The typical business reporting process, a day in the life. Here's a business user. Let's say these are your executives, your managers, and your frontline employees. Let's call our business user Eugene. Over here is all the data about Eugene's business. For example, let's say we've got his inventory, accounting, and CRM, and they're all within their own databases. Eugene needs to leverage each one of these databases to make informed decisions about his business. So how does Eugene go about accessing all of this data? Well, that's where the analyst enters. These are the report builders or the gatekeepers to all of the business data. Let's call our analyst Alan. The company that Eugene and Alan work for sells shoes. Alan's responsibility is to go into each database and combine the data to create a weekly report and then send a static workbook to Eugene about the company's shoe sales. Eugene opens the report and can see how many red shoes and blue shoes they've sold this week. He then realizes that he needs to know what state each red shoe is sold in order to determine budget allocation for the next week. Unfortunately for Eugene, his workbook is static, so he can't drill down into any of the numbers. Now Eugene finds himself at a crossroads and has two options. He can go back to Alan and request a new report with additional information on red shoes, or he can go into the databases and try to create his own report. But both of these options take time. To create his own report, he has to have access to the databases, be able to export the data, massage it, cleanse it, and then format it in the way he needs. On the other hand, he could go back to Alan, but Alan has 4 other business users who he also sends weekly reports to, and they have questions as well. So Eugene would have to get in line to get this new report. And this vicious cycle would just continue. Alan will spend a majority of his time building and modifying reports rather than analyzing data and identifying trends to help the business. Eugene would constantly be waiting for a new, updated report so that he could make his decisions. Are you starting to see a trend here? With BizNet software, Eugene can answer his own questions, he can drill down and see the numbers behind the numbers and know that the data is up to date and accurate in order to make the best decisions for the business. And what about Alan? Alan can connect directly to their databases and quickly build interactive reports and send them to his business users with live data. This allows Alan to do what he was hired to do, which is identify trends and opportunities within a company's data, rather than spending a majority of his time pulling reports for all the different Eugenes in the company. And on top of all of that, this is all within Microsoft Excel, the program that Alan and Eugene both already know how to use. So when it comes to self-service business intelligence and reporting, BizNet Software has you covered.
All right, so let's get a quick idea of what we're going to show and get into our demonstration today. Today we're going to focus on BizInsight. BizInsight is the user interface. It delivers interactive Excel reports, lets you create reports, delivers drill down details, and this engine is now available for both end users and analysts. Because, as you'll see, it provides a mechanism to send information to end users without having to be connected to a system. We'll also show our Biz Connector, which provides direct connections to a number of ERP systems and delivers that real-time data for end users. Today we won't be talking about Biz Broadcast, but we will show a supplement or a different mechanism of distributing reports using the new BizInsight 7. So I'm going to switch over to a demonstration environment and provide a very, very quick example. And that is, this report book is available for download at biznetsoftware.com, and I'll share that link with you in just a moment. And it provides an interactive report that is very much like you've come to expect from BizNet Software. But here is what perhaps you haven't come to expect, and that is, I want to get a handle on my sales. I want to see the amount sold, the average, the margin, and the quantity of sales to each customer. Now, this particular workbook, because this is a connected table, has the opportunity for me to refresh this table with just the click of a mouse. And now I have that listing of all of my customers. And now I want to do just a simple function. I want to query this data. The source of my data in this workbook is only Excel. It is in the sales order data set. I want a sum, and I have a number of different operators that are available to me. I want a sum. Actually, I want invoice data. There we go. I want a sum of the extended amount when my customer ID is equal to the listing in column C. And I'll anchor that column just as part of best practices in report building. And I want to put it right in C11. So there is my amount of sales to Aldebaran. But what is my average sale? I'll copy that function, paste it, open the Query Data button, change one operator. I want the average. I'll drop it into F11. I want some additional analysis. I want to see what my margin is. Now I can just choose the sum of the gross margin, add that to my table, and finally, just for fun, how many did I ship? And so I'll get a sum of the quantity shipped, and I'll drop that into my table. I do a flash fill, and suddenly I have, using tools that an end user could easily navigate, I have a pretty good report of my average sale by customer.
Now, Floyd, I don't mean to interrupt, but how would this compare to, say, a pivot table? Why would you do this instead of maybe doing some of those as calculated columns?
Okay, well, you know, formatting might be one thing, but let's add a little bit more analysis to this.
Cool.
And that is, what territory were these sales coming from? But this time, my invoice data doesn't have the territory descriptions. I have to go to a different data set. I have to go to sales order data. I want to get a maximum of the sales territory whenever my filter, again, is related to that customer in column C. Say OK, place it where it belongs. And now I also have all of the territories that were involved in those sales. Maybe a little different than what you could do in a standard pivot table.
So you're able to use these super functions to combine data from multiple data sets.
Absolutely, thanks. That's exactly what it does.
Cool.
All right, Jordan, do you want to show us some of the additional functionality that is available within BizInsight 7? I'm going to make you the presenter.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm extremely excited to be with everybody today and looking forward to taking you on a tour of BizInsight 7 and show you some of the things that I think are really cool, and especially with a focus on some of the self-service business intelligence options and also how your business users can benefit from the reports that you create. So here, just a reminder that everything I'm showing in this demo and also what Floyd has shown today is available in our trial connector download. So if you were to navigate to biznetsoftware.com, go to BizInsight 7 and scroll down, you'll see some free trial icons there that you can click on and download a free 30-day trial. Why that's important for the analysts on the phone is it also includes data. So it actually includes a sample connector with a lot of different data from inventory and sales and financials as well that you can play with, templates that our training team has created, as well as do all of the examples that I'm going to show today and really play with the functionality of the product with some data behind it. So with that, I'm going to start Excel here and start BizInsight 7. And if you'll notice, for those of you that are familiar with V5, or what we call version 5, the user interface, if you didn't already notice when Floyd was doing his demonstration, is completely revised. So if you're seeing it for the first time, a lot of it is tailored towards just refreshing the overall look and feel of the product, and then also adding some key functionality to help users create their own queries, as well as get connected to training and resources faster. So one of the things you'll notice right away is that as soon as I start the product, it says, hey, would you like to see a tutorial for BizInsight? And I'll say, yes, I'd like to. And then it's actually going to go out and download from our new central repository. We've got a content repository now that's that it's able to connect to and pull down the training workbooks that the training team has put together. And they've done an excellent job with these. You can click through each sheet here, see kind of how the navigation pane has changed. Also, it kind of really introduces you to all the concepts at a high level, and then gets you into several different exercises that you could do as you play with the trial. And that will actually, it'll prompt you right when you start the product. And of course, if you don't want to see it, you could just say, I don't want to see this anymore. To bring it back, to look over here on the navigation pane, to bring it back and reset those preferences, there's a new settings icon over here. You can customize your preferences. Kind of a lot of the different options that maybe you saw in 5 are now over here on this side under the settings dialog. And if you ever want that trial window to pop back up on a regular basis, you can click to reset all those preferences. Go. So for now, I'm actually just going to come over here to a blank workbook. I'm actually going to, yeah, of course I said right then, don't ask me. Nope. All right. So I'm actually going to close out of the tutorial. and come over here, and we're going to explore some of the finer points of the navigation pane. So this is BizNet sample data. Now, obviously, if you're connected to your own data, you're going to see different options here. But I want to introduce you to some of the concepts you'll see on the left-hand side. Templates, those are somewhat self-explanatory. They're templates that our training team has created to help you get started faster with the product. The sample data itself is listed out here. And again, we've got Planet Football, which is one of my favorite data sets that we'll be playing with today. Customer data, invoice data, item data, warehouse items, more inventory-related data. And then formulas, the normal formulas that you would be familiar with in version 5 of our product, month to date, year to date. In this particular sample database, there's only formulas for the financial data. And then maybe something that you haven't seen before in the past is the data validation concept. So we've got some pre-built data validations that we're going to begin shipping with a lot of our connectors that help you get drop-down values in your reports even faster. Maybe today, using BizNet, you're maybe doing a 4 or 5-step process to get a list of data, bring that data into a data validation list, and refer back to it. And of course, the other challenge with that is getting that data refreshed so that those drop-down values continue to have meaning in the report going forward. Well, with the data validation concept, you can simply drag and drop, press OK, and it's going to build out the list of company codes in this case, and then also a drop-down data validation list that you can see. Okay. Of course, we're doing live. That always happens when we do live, right? Practiced this for about an hour this morning, and then of course it doesn't work on me when I try to do it live. So anyway, let's go back. Let's go forward a little bit to my next example, and we'll talk about some of the more business user related features. So if we come down here to Planet Football, if I drag and drop this, and also you might notice on the left side there's an icon here that kind of gives you an idea of what your result set's going to be. So let's say if I look at formulas, that's got the f of x. So I know that's going to be a single aggregate that's returned. And then if I come down here to say tables, I'm going to know that's going to be a list of data or a table of data, an Excel table, if you will. Some of you who are more familiar with databases might think a table is a table in a database, but for us Excel junkies, we really feel like tables are a specific object within Excel. So let me drag over Planet Football. And one thing you'll notice right away is that whenever I drag a table, some of the more advanced options to create formulas, to create expressions, some of the more, I guess you would say, analyst-focused features that you've seen in the past in our product, they don't appear automatically. If you look down here, there's an advanced button on the bottom right. If I click that, then I get to see a lot of the things that maybe I've seen in the past with version 5. Like if I want to list a data, if I want a formula, if I want to create a data validation, which is new, and then of course if I want to create an expression, which are combinations of filter criteria that let you do ands and ors and more complex operations. So here I'll drag over Planet Football again. And this is what we call kind of our basic query interface. I'm going to assume that you want to get a list of values back, not do an aggregation. And then I can come over here and select the columns that I'd like to return within that. I can select them all. I can select just a few. I can also sort those, ascending and descending, and then revert them back to their original list. And now, by default, they're listed in the order that the query was made. What that does is allow our business solutions team to kind of put these in a more pleasing format. You might not want to sort them alphabetically. It might make sense for you to have the invoice date right after the invoice number, which might not sort alphabetically. So our connector team, our business solutions team, kind of looks at what the right order of these columns is going to be and puts them in that order first. So anytime you want to revert to the original sorting options, you can just click the undo button. Now here I'm going to go ahead and select all columns, and then I'm going to add some filter criteria. in this particular case, I'm going to go down and find the salesperson. And as Floyd mentioned earlier, you've got a full range of operators here. Greater than, less than, not equal to, the little exclamation point equal is a not equal to. If I pick the equal to, one thing that I think is really key is the ability to reach into the system and pull out values that are meaningful to the end user, right? A lot of, you know, myself included, advanced Excel users take for granted our ability to use cell referencing and anchoring and those kinds of things. And sometimes the typical business user is not as familiar with some of those Excel features. So one of the things, and this came out of feedback, when we looked at some of our competitors and what they were doing, one of the single biggest pieces of feedback that we got when kind of doing the win-loss analysis and competitive comparison was that you don't present me any values from my system that I can use right out of the box. When I drag and drop something, I don't know what to put here. I have to go over, bring a list of values over, and then use cell referencing to get those. So here, we're going to pick, now I've got some heroes listed out here. Now you could argue that Justin Bieber is not a hero, but I'm going to go with the rest of them as being heroes. Marge is one of my favorites. But here I'm going to pick Captain America, press OK, and there, it was as easy as that. I didn't have to do cell referencing. I didn't have to really think about what values were available to type in there. I just simply drag and dropped, picked the column I wanted, picked the criteria, and clicked one of the values in the drop-down list. Now that doesn't make that very dynamic. That would be kind of more what we call maybe an ad hoc example, right? I just quickly want to look at this particular data set is sales data for given salespeople for a bunch of different teams here, right? A lot of NFL teams. If you guys are NFL fans, you might recognize your team here. So let's go create another sheet, and we're going to make this a little bit more dynamic or fluid. I'll drag over Planet Football again. I'll go ahead and add that salesperson filter. And, oh, I do want to back up and show a really cool feature. So let's say I'm used to retrieving sales for Captain America on a regular basis, right? Maybe that's a query that I run every day. I come in, I drag over, I want to see sales. Maybe I am Captain America, and I want to see those things. I don't mean, you know, not literally. I press OK here, and then, oh, excuse me, no. I'm going to come over here to save. So you might have noticed this little button on the left side called Save. And this is really cool because it will not only save the criteria that you put in, it'll also save the columns you selected and some of the other options that you see. So let's say I'd like to save this, like Captain America Sales. And I have a checkbox here that says I'd like to keep those values. So the value that I passed in this case Captain America, I'd like to keep that with the query. So I'll save it. And then right up here, under my favorites, under custom queries, I now have basically a brand new query called Captain America Sales. And I drag that guy over. It saves the value. And there we are. I'm right back to that. Okay, so now let's back to my dynamic example. So let's make this a little bit more dynamic. We'll go ahead and use our Captain America Sales here. And then right up here, I'm going to check this Make Dynamic. I'm going to press OK. And what that's going to do is insert right above the table a value that I can then type in and replace some of the options. So this creates what's called an expression. You might recognize that from V5. And I'll say Spider-Man. So here I can just go up and edit the cell. Now, it still shows Captain America Sales. So in this particular case, I have to right-click anywhere inside this range of data and click the refresh table. And that'll pick up the changes that I've made to the expression. I also could have done that by clicking refresh workbooks. In this case, I knew I only had this one table that I wanted to refresh, so I went ahead and right-clicked over there. Now, I'm getting to the really cool part. So if all that seems like, okay, that's stuff that you guys did in V5 before, you just kind of made that a little prettier, I'm going to take it up a notch, as Emerald says. So we'll go to Captain America Sales. And then here, I'm going to click the Advanced button. And then so it kind of sets up the table query the same way. But here I'm going to check Make Dynamic, and you'll see a little new option appear right here called Create Data Validation Lists. When I click this guy, I'm going to press OK. And in addition to inserting that expression, what it also did is put the drop-down list for the salesperson. So in the example a minute ago where I had to type in Spider-Man, I no longer have to do that. And what's even cooler is I no longer have to remember to refresh it either. So let's go back. I'll change it to Spider-Man. And what you're going to see is, boom, it immediately updated. And it's kind of how you would think intuitively it should happen in the first place. Meaning, as soon as I change that value, our new code goes, hey, I see that value's changed. Let me go refresh this for Spider-Man, right? And I can go through and change it back to Captain America, change it to Homer Simpson. We can check out how Bieber's doing. Looks like he's heavy into the Denver Broncos koozies. Now, if that wasn't cool enough, we're going to go forward a little bit, and we're going to pack this and send it to a user who doesn't have this database, who isn't connected to this data. So here I'm going to delete these sheets. This is getting more now transitioning into some of the pack and go features. So I'm going to delete these sheets. I'm going to keep this one. We'll call it Hero Sales.
Okay, Jordan, explain to us just a little bit what is pack and go, and you're about to show us what it's doing, but what is it in terms of how it's going to help our audience of analysts and business users?
Great. Good question, Floyd. So what we wanted to do with pack and go is allow more of the business users to answer their own questions without needing to be connected to the data. So analysts can go through, build reports, embed the data that they want to send to them, basically have a lower privileged or lower licensed user to be able to take that incoming workbook, pull that data out of that workbook, and then be able to create new series of reports off of it, answer their own questions. And that's really the genesis of pack and go. Was if you're not connected to the data, but you still want to receive reports, interact, and drill down, then this is a good way to, the pack and go is really created for that purpose, which is really just let me as an analyst build this out for you. I'll send it to you as a business unit. You can receive it, open it up, it'll unpack the data automatically, and you'll be able to drill down and have some limited interactivity. Basically whatever data the analyst decided to send with the report. So here, if I wanted to, if I wanted to just kind of make this a little prettier, we'll hide this expression. So basically, when I send it to the user, they're going to be able to change the salesperson and see the sales update for any salesperson they picked. I'll click up here. Up here on the navigation pane, you're going to see something called Pack and Go. And it asks me, yeah, I'll just go ahead and save changes. And then it's going to say, hey, where do you want me to output this pack workbook? Where do you want me to pack it? It's kind of a working directory. So by default, it's just going to go to my documents directory. Now I'll have an opportunity to change that directory when I want to distribute it in a minute. And what it's doing right there is it's looking at the report, looking at what I've created and saying, hey, I need to take that data from the database and basically compress it and put it inside of the workbook. And then it's going to ask me, okay, what do you want to do with this? I've packed it. Now, do you want me to email this as an attachment? Do you want me to email this as a link to a document location? Like if I had picked maybe a shared directory initially, it would draft an email with a link to that shared directory. Or I can simply just attach it. But we've also added some Dropbox options. And I'm really, really proud, excited to let you guys know about our Dropbox integration options. Microsoft does a great job of really pushing you towards OneDrive, and that's a great product as well. But we know that in the workforce, a lot of people use Dropbox on a daily basis. So we wanted to augment some of the features of Excel with this Dropbox integration. So I'm going to pick the Upload to Dropbox option to distribute the workbook. It's going to ask me to log in and authenticate. And then it's going to actually show me, basically have me pick the location in my Dropbox where I'd like to put this. So I'll click the little folder browser. This is going to iterate through the folders that I have in my Dropbox account. And you'll see this is an EP for one of our QA testers has a band, and so he shared his EP with me recently. It's pretty cool stuff. I'm going to pick the reports folder, press OK, and then this little checkbox is important. So if I leave it unchecked, what it's going to do is basically it's going to be on me to share that with others. As we deal with financial data and a lot of different kinds of data, we didn't want to automatically share it on your behalf in a publicly viewable area. So if you check this box, what it's going to do is basically create a shared link that anybody can see if they have the URL. So if you're concerned about the safety of the data and that kind of thing, I recommend you don't check that. I'm going to go ahead and check it today for the sake of the demo because it looks very, very clean. But if you're familiar with Dropbox, they have a lot of different ways that you can share the data once you've uploaded it. But again, today I'm going to go ahead and say create and provide a link to the file. And it's already been put up there, so it's uploaded to my Dropbox. I'm going to close. And then I'm going to close here. And now what it's done is in my Outlook, it's created a draft email saying, hey, someone shared a BizInsight Pack and Go workbook with you. To view this workbook, follow these instructions. So if they already have BizInsight, they can pretty much disregard the first instruction. If they don't have it, they can start the free trial. Also, the next step down here is clicking on the link. So if you notice, if I hover over the link here, it's kind of probably a little small on your screen, but there's a little HTTPS icon. What we've done is we've called the Dropbox API and said, hey, I'd like you to share that on this user's behalf. And if I hold down Control and click this link, you'll see it takes me right to that report. Now, by default, Dropbox is pretty cool. It's got a very nice integration with Excel Online, but I'd rather actually like to download it and use it in the local Excel. So here I'm going to minimize my my virtual environment and go back to my desktop. Now here on my desktop, I don't have a connection to the underlying data. All I've got is our base BizInsight 7 license, which allows me to receive packed workbooks or pack and go workbooks, and also allows me to analyze Excel data in the way that Floyd was showing at the beginning of the presentation. So here I just pasted in that link. So I just kind of, you can imagine in your mind, I received the email, right? I'm just looking at that link here, and I've got a copy of that workbook saved to my desktop right here. So I'm going to double click on it. Come over here to BizInsight 7. I'll start BizInsight 7. And 7 will immediately go, hey, I see you've got some packed workbook in this data, or packed data in this workbook. And it's going to basically pull it out, decompress it, and load it up into memory. Cool. And then once it unpacks it, it happened really fast in this particular case. I wasn't dealing with a lot of data. It also asks you if you want to refresh the workbook once it's been opened. What that does is kind of give it the opportunity to go after that Excel in-memory cache and update it with any differences that happened between the time you packed it and the time you received it. So see, if you check it out here now, I've received this workbook, and the same interactivity that was afforded to me using BizInsight with a connector is given to me with the successfully unpacked workbook. So I can change these values around and get the sales for Marge or Justin Bieber or Minnie Mouse. And then any of this data that you see, I can use in the formulas within BizInsight, right? If I come up here to BizInsight, I can go to View Data, and you'll see our in-memory cache contains all of the Planet Football sales data for 2014, right? So not only can I interact with what an analyst has sent me, but I can also add on to this. If I wanted to add a super function here, I can do that. If I wanted to add additional queries into it. Now, I can't add new data to it, but I can create new reports with that data that I've received. And that really, in a nutshell, is our Pack and Go feature within BizInsight 7. There's a lot of other really cool features in BizInsight 7 related to performance, caching. There's a whole new cache management tool that allows you to manage when to go back to the database to get new data. If you think about the life cycle of a financial report, well, you're always comparing data, right? You're comparing year over year and those kinds of things. And what you really want to think about is how can I improve performance by not having to go get historical data? And we've got some really cool tools to show on that, maybe for another session coming up here in the next month or two. So I appreciate Floyd's time today, and I hope you guys really enjoyed the Pack and Go demonstration. And now I'm going to hand it back to Floyd, and I'm just so pleased that you guys invited me today to talk with everybody. And
very good. Well, let's ask just one more question, and that relates directly to what you've just seen, and that is, how beneficial do you think this idea of being able to pack data with a report will be for your end users? And right now we got about 20%, well, 18% of you have voted, about a quarter now, and I do appreciate everyone participating in the polls.
don't be shy. Let us know if we hit the mark.
We're getting close to about 50%. Actually, we just cleared 50%. I'll give it just another minute or two. And we've got 3/4 of you. I'm going to close this poll and share the results. And the amazing thing is that the only numbers are in the top 2 lines. And so we appreciate that very much because, you know, indeed that is the idea behind several of the features within our new BizInsight 7. I want to just wrap up real quickly. We do want to leave some time for questions and answers. I'm not going to let Jordan get away from us just yet. But what is the difference between BizInsight 5 and BizInsight 7? And hopefully you just saw a couple of those examples. BizInsight 5 is a remarkable analysis and reporting tool. We're blessed every day that so many of you have embraced that as your standard. It provides pre-built functions and analysis sets. It's drag and drop. It lets people drill down to pivots, tables, and licenses. It has an in-memory cache. But it also requires a server installation, and it also requires manual updates at every desktop that's using the software. Now, Jordan and his team have dramatically improved that process over the past couple of years, but there's still a server component. Whereas with BizInsight 7, we still have pre-built functions and analysis sets. We call them tables. System connectors add purchase orders, sales orders, inventory management, and in addition to project analysis and multi-currency and AR and AP. You can customize and save any function or table. You can customize and save any function or table. You can support side-by-side versions. Some of you in legacy versions of BizInsight can actually run your BizInsight 5 installation inside a BizInsight 7 environment and take advantage of being able to store information in cache and use the new function interface. You can drill down to pivots and tables even when you're disconnected. It's a persistent in-memory cache. You can refresh only the data that's needed, and there's no server-side installation at all. Updates are pushed to the desktop. So hopefully that helps a little bit. All of you folks will be getting an email from my address following this session. If there are additional questions, I'd be glad to answer them at that time. But now let's open it up for Jordan to answer some questions from the audience.
And we apologize for some of the technical issues you've had today. A lot of your comments are related around not being able to see the videos. It's a fairly new feature in GoToMeeting, or GoToWebinar, so we thank you for your patience there today.
Absolutely. So how do these functions, and this thank you for this question. How do these functions interact with the Power BI tools? Can you link these refreshable reports to a dashboard that the management team can view without BizNet access?
Yes, absolutely. So if you're familiar with Power BI and its ability to pin sections of workbooks to dashboards, one of the things that we're working on building up some video content for is this concept of distributing via the Power BI application. So as some of you know, the Power BI application is a free download from Microsoft. It works on a lot of different devices. So as a distribution mechanism, it's very enticing for us. There is an add-in for Power BI for Excel that allows you to basically pin and keep up to date sections of workbooks shown on a dashboard. And so that's kind of the area that we're exploring next, is what kinds of functionality can we use to pair with that. We're actually using, right now we're going through a process internally in our own company to use some of the dashboarding capabilities of Power BI. But again, it's really around pinning. There's a really cool tool for Excel that allows you to basically highlight a section of a workbook and pin it to a dashboard in Power BI. And if you put that workbook out on OneDrive or on Dropbox or on a place that's shared, anytime you push updates to it, it'll actually update that dashboard as well. And so when you look at our broadcast tool, its ability to push updated workbooks to multiple different locations, or this concept of pack and go workbooks pushing data to central locations, the Power BI dashboarding application becomes very effective pairing. So that's kind of where we see that going in the next year or so. Good question.
And the next question, and we appreciate this one as well, and that is, when is this available? BizInsight 7 is available now for disconnected users. It's a download from businesssoftware.com, and the pricing for just BizInsight is on a subscription basis. Also, BizInsight 7 is available for a number of different ERPs, including Intact, Blackbaud Razor's Edge, Blackbaud Financial Edge, SAP Business One, Sage 500, soon to be released for Microsoft Great Plains. Also available now for CISPRO. It is part of Epicor 10, and you folks would know that as Excel Connect. A number of different systems available already, and certainly more on the way. I do want to stress, though, that any data that's in Excel is accessible with BizInsight 7. And numbers of studies and numbers of our own polls have shown that almost all of you export data to Excel for you to use in your reporting processes. Any other questions? We give you back a few minutes of your day. Again, I will be distributing under my email address today a link to the recording. All right. Well, thank you very much, all of you. Looking forward to hearing your feedback on this event, and also want to thank Jordan for taking some time with us today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Bye now.